So in this video we are going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We are now on episode 54 of the series, and in the last episode we saw even more events taking place throughout the Cold War. We also saw some alliance build up and much more. But if you do end up enjoying this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, and let's get straight into it. So the first thing I want to say is this is actually going to be the penultimate episode of the Cold War. That is right, the Cold War will be actually ending in the next episode, so I really hope you guys are excited for that, and I hope you guys are excited for the next era after the Cold War. But anyway, let's get into this video. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is going to be down here in Oceania. So, taking a look at the alliances layer, we can see that Oceania is a pretty divided continent. Of course, we've got the red Australian country aligned with Tokyo, we've got the purple one aligned with the USB, and we've got the light blue one aligned with India. And there is actually another country in Oceania that until this point has remained pretty neutral, however they will actually be joining an alliance now. And the alliance that they will be joining and the country that will be joining the alliance is actually going to be the Papua team. Now, the Papua New Guinea country does not much like Indonesia. They don't really like Indonesia because Indonesia has a land claim over them. They also have quite a few territorial water disputes because of the islands that Indonesia has right off the coast of this country. And there is a certain foreign power that has been funding these guys, and that country is Egypt. And just like that, the Papua New Guinea country is going to go ahead and join in on the Arrow Alliance. This is a long time coming, it would have probably happened a bit earlier, but we see it happening now, and basically all of Oceania is now involved in this Cold War. But next up, we're going to be moving over to North America, because we're actually going to be seeing a war taking place over here. And this war is going to be involving Ohio. So, as we know, Ohio is aligned with Egypt. They are in the Arrow Alliance, like I've just been talking about with Papua New Guinea. But these guys, they are fairly expansionist. They are quite right wing. They have a lot of nationalist policies. They're quite a nationalist country. And they want to go out and get some land. And with some funding from Egypt, because Egypt, of course, is going to fund their allies to get stronger, these guys are going to be going out and invading a country. And the country that they're going to be invading is going to be the Grey Dakota country. So we have the Ohioan forces crossing the Mississippi River, quickly capturing two major cities just like so. Ohio is probably about 5 times stronger than Dakota, so really no match for them. We see a special naval force be set out from the Great Lakes, with a landing taking place near this major city by Ohio, and after this they just move around all of this area, and then they connect up their front lines over here. But they're going to go ahead and meet up with this river, which essentially cuts off these forces down here from the rest of Dakota, leading to a pretty notable encirclement. And after this, the Ohioan forces are going to move up this tributary of the Mississippi River, which gets them pretty close to the capital of Dakota. After this, we see a sweeping movement into this little bulge area as Ohio quickly manages to move in, and we also see them connect up with this river right over here. On a battle for a town on the border of this river, we do actually see Dakota manage to push Ohio back a little bit, and they also do make a pushback in the north. However, Ohio at this point is fully going in on the capital region, so we see Ohio manage to continue advance until they reach the outskirts of the capital of Dakota. We also see them make another advance in the south, moving along the border of Oklahoma. And after a week-long siege, we see the capital of Dakota be captured by Ohioan forces. And shortly after that, after they lose this northern major city, Dakota is going to go ahead and surrender, and we can take a look at this peace treaty. So, taking a look at this peace treaty, we can see Ohio is going to annex this pretty large chunk of land, giving them another 2 major cities, as well as this land on the border of the Great Lakes right here. And just like that, Ohio has become a lot chunkier. But that is actually not going to be the only war we're going to be seeing break out in North America. And to see the war I'm talking about, we need to move over to the Purple Team. Now, the Purple Team is a little bit of a dodgy country. As we can see, they are a flawed democracy, and there are a few aspects of this country that is quite corrupt. If I had a corruption layer, they would be like, kind of like more corrupt than not. They are a bit of a corrupt country, and unfortunately for them, they have a little bit of a substance problem. But this country is a really big manufacturer of a lot of drugs, especially a lot of amphetamines, and unfortunately for a lot of these Quebec countries, this guy is exporting a lot of this product into these three. Now, the Council of Nations doesn't really see this as like a massive dispute, you know, it's not exactly the country that's doing this sketchy business, but a lot of manufacturers of product in this country, it's causing a little bit of an issue for these Quebec countries. So what we see is these three countries are actually going to be forming a league against the Purple Country, and they're actually going to be launching an invasion of the Purple Team. They state that they want to fix the Purple Country's issues with corruption, and they also want to stop. They want to reinforce the police system in this country to put down a lot of the drug issues and the drug manufacturers in this country that is directly hurting them. So we see these guys launch an invasion into the Purple Country, like I just said. Now, the Purple Country isn't the strongest of countries, however, the Quebec countries are very weak, but combined, these three are just a little bit stronger than the Purple Team, so they are able to see quite a bit of success. We see the Blue Team make a pretty big advance down, as they are trying to make a spearhead towards the capital, which is their main aim. They believe if they can take the capital of this country, they will probably be surrendering. We also see the Orange Team meet up with this river entrance, I believe, and they move along said river, and they also meet up with the front lines of the Blue Team. We also see the Green Team move their navy down this strait thing, and they start bombarding the coastal towns of this country. Now, I'm not too sure if it's realistic to do this, but they are going to make a landing right here. We also see the Blue Team make a connection up to this river over here, and they use this as a spearhead to capture this one major city. We also see them move around the Hudson Bay area, capturing this city as well as the rest of their coast. At this point, we do see a pretty large retreat by the Purple Team in this region right here. Next up, we're moving over to the Lime Team's landing. We see them make a pretty large expansion. The Lime Team is actually one of the stronger countries. In fact, I would probably say they are the strongest country in the league, considering they are in the best location, and they probably have the largest population. So despite the fact they are the smallest, they are kind of carrying this war. As we see them make a really notable advance down south, and they start also blitzing towards the capital, moving along the same river that the Blue Team is. At this point, it basically becomes a race, but not really, for who can get to the capital first, although it's not a race like I just said, as these guys are working together. Now, the Orange Team, they haven't really done much. Their job is basically just to occupy the areas that have been captured. But they will make a pretty notable push into this region that has kind of just been encircled by the forces. Like, this is the only connection point to all of this area, so it basically just falls, and it's at this point where we see the siege of the capital city begin. Now, unfortunately, a lot of like the mafia bosses and the drug manufacturers in this country have escaped. They have actually fled into the New York country. The dictator is like, yeah, come on in, make us some money by selling drugs, that sounds great. As we can see, they are a dictatorship. And after a bit of a siege, we see the capital city of the Purple Team be captured. However, unfortunately for the League, they don't surrender, they do keep on fighting. They hope to just kind of hold out and not suffer too harsh of a peace treaty. Basically, the government of the Purple Team is like, okay, if we don't surrender, we'll keep our same corrupt government and we'll be fine. But unfortunately for the Purple Team, the League isn't going to stop. They will not be stopping until they have managed to fully take over the Purple Team. And unfortunately for the Purple Team, someone's about to help the League. But not exactly to help the League, more so just to benefit themselves. Who is it going to be? Oh, hello, Ohio. So we see Ohio make an advance up the peninsula right here. They quickly take two major cities, and this is basically the final nail in the coffin for this country. Ohio is way stronger than them, and they lose their two most populated major cities. And with that happening and their final major city being captured by the League, the Purple Team is going to go ahead and surrender, and just like that, we can take a look at this peace treaty. So this is what we see for the peace treaty. So first of all, the members of the League that gain land, we see the Orange Team gain this amount of provinces right here, and we see the Quebec country gain this land right over here. They also gained this island for some reason. Down here we see Ohio gain this peninsula, and in terms of the government, it was overthrown, and after a little bit of help being set up by the members of the League, we see a new full democratic government be set in this country, which is pretty good for these guys. Now, unfortunately, the crime bosses that were in this country have basically just gone over to New York now, so I mean, they were able to fix the corruption in the government, but in terms of the product problem, it still exists down here. So we'll see if the League is going to do anything about that. Next up, we're going to be moving over to Eastern Asia because we actually need to look at an expansion of the Asian Economical Alliance. As we see the Yellow Team down over here join, and we also see the Philippines country join. So not too much of an expansion there, but still fairly notable. But next up, we're going to be moving over to Western Africa, and the event we're seeing here is also going to be somewhat related to an economical alliance. So if we take a look at the economical alliances layer, we can see that Morocco has their own economical alliance that is pretty notably in a lot of the Saharan countries that are quite struggling with their economies. Another thing you may have noticed, and I don't know if I ever did explicitly bring this up, but Morocco is only adding democracies into their alliance, or pro-democratic countries, like they would also let any constitutional monarchies in. But it is starting to look like this alliance may have a bit of an ulterior motive than just helping out countries' economies. As we see a mission take place by this alliance, which is pretty interesting because this alliance isn't a military alliance. And the mission that we're going to be seeing is actually to topple the dictatorship government in the Mint country. Now, the Mint country's dictatorship is very anti-people friendly, and it's come about that these guys are actually committing a lot of war crimes against their own civilians. So, with Morocco being a regional member of the CN, they decided to use their alliance for good and say, hey, let's go in and stop these guys from being evil assholes, and we'll also give you some land in the peace treaty. So, yeah, win-win. So we see Morocco send in troops, and we also see the grey team, the blue team, and the yellow team also start their invasions in. We see the grey team see the most success as they're able to capture 2 major cities. The blue team captures this one major city up here, and very quickly the grey team captures the capital. These guys were just completely outmatched. They had absolutely no chance of winning. And within a few weeks of after losing their final major city over here, these guys are going to go ahead and surrender. So let's take a look at this peace treaty. So taking a look at this peace treaty, we can see that if we take a look at the ideologies layer, which I need to pull up, I don't know what I'm doing, we see a new democratic government is put in place. Now, I did say that these guys would be getting land in the peace treaty. However, I feel like it makes a bit more sense. You know, Morocco is a democratic country, or well, constitutional monarchy, but they want to uphold the values of the CN, so they decided not to take land. But with these guys having their new democratic government, we're going to see, after a little bit of time and preparation with these guys readying their economy to be fixed, we see them go ahead and join in on the economical alliance just like so. Next up, continuing on to look at sub-Saharan Africa, we need to move over to these 2 countries right here. Now, recently these 2 guys were involved in a proxy war. The Indians funded the blue team, and the USB funded Nigeria, and after the war these guys did not join in on any alliances, but we finally see this take place. Now, the USB was fine with not allying with Nigeria, but with India adding these guys to their alliance first, the USB, they basically have their hand forced, so they add Nigeria to their alliance just like so, and great, another point of tension, well done guys. And for the final event of this video, we're actually going to be seeing a complete collapse of a country. Now, it's not happened too often in this series where a country is just straight up collapsed, like just completely fallen apart, but we actually have it happening here. And what country is this, you may be asking? Well, it's actually the Siberian country. Now, if we take a look at the ideologies layer, the Siberian country is a dictatorship. Their dictator is not very popular, and fun fact, Siberia at this point is the only remaining country in the entire world that still has slavery. These guys are very backwards. It's kind of like Russia before World War One. These guys are still very feudal. They are barely at all industrialized. The only industrial city they have in their entire country is this one, and the only reasoning for that is because this used to be controlled by Sakhalin, and even so, this city is still extremely small, and this country just fully relies on any farming that they can have. And with their population growing, farming is not so much of a viable option anymore, as there isn't enough food to feed the people of this country, and we have mass famines breaking out across Siberia, and this leads to multiple different organisations breaking away. In the very far west, we see a communist revolution breaking out over here. These guys are the first group to break away, and they promise to fix up this country. They're kind of inspired by what happened with Beijing becoming communist. The lives of the civilians in that country actually improved quite a lot, and they plan to do the same here, especially considering the land that they live in is very unvaluable. The second group we see breaking out is actually kind of like an ethno-state of Japanese peoples. This land was, when it was first taken, was colonized by Hokkaido, and the peoples of Hokkaido, if we take a look at the religion layer, still reside over here, and they want their own separate ethno-state. So we see these guys break away just like so. I'm going to make their colour a bit more purple because it's way too similar to Korea. The next faction we see breaking away is the Democratic faction. These guys want a new government that will focus on modernizing instead of just being ruled by a dictator. We're actually going to be seeing one final group breakaway. This one barely has any support. It's basically just a different dictator. This guy has some regions that support him in the south. This is like his major city. He was ruling this region. But this area down here was basically not under control of Siberia already. These guys had basically just, it was like a, if you think of it in real life, there's like non-recognized countries like Somaliland. This was basically what this is here. But with Siberia breaking out into full-on chaos, these guys see their opportunity to fully break away and start an actual revolt. So that's what we see happening there. And so these are the sides we're going to be seeing in the Siberian Civil War. So the first thing we see after these groups break away is the success of the communists. The communists managed to consolidate pretty well in the west. They managed to take over all of this land. Now, I don't know how Volga would feel about there being a communist country on their border, but they decide to stay out. Now, they are a leading member of the Council of Nations, and as I did say before, you're technically not allowed to be a communist country, but Volga will just leave these guys alone, and their policy is like, if these guys show any signs of aggression, if they do get their independence, then we will go in and stop them. For instance, if they start invading the pink team, then they will respond. Now, moving over here, one thing interesting to note, the Democratic faction and the this is kind of like the Japanese People's faction, these guys are technically the same identity, as we can see, like I did just pull up the religion layer, these guys are ethnic Japanese peoples, so I'm not too sure if these guys would like to work with the Siberians, but it's going to be happening either way, as we see as we see an ethnic Siberian group join the Democratic faction up here, and after a few months we basically see the full control of this northern region fall over to the Japanese ethnicity country and the pro-democratic forces. Now, unfortunately for the pro-democratic forces, the Japanese group is going to start an invasion into them, capturing one major city. These guys want full control over their ethnic areas, and to get that they would have to invade the democratic forces. Moving back down south, we do actually see Siberia do very well against the different dictatorship movement down here. These guys, like I did say, are very weak. However, unfortunately for Siberia, they are about to face a distraction that will allow these guys to make a bit of a comeback. And what is that going to be, you may ask? Well, we see the Green Manchurian country cross the border into Siberia. Now, this is very bad for Siberia, as, these guys are probably even stronger than Siberia, even if they were all united. So that isn't too great for them, and luckily, they are pretty good at fighting in the environment, so they are able to hold out with a siege of their capital. However, this does cause them to withdraw a stupid amount of forces from the western region, which allows the communists to make a very notable amount of gains. Basically, just consolidating all of the land in the north as well. There's of course no fighting happening up here. Basically, this land just falls over to the communists. Moving back over to the dictatorship forces down here, we see them manage to continue to push up. And unfortunately for Siberia, seeing the failures of the main dictatorship being the Lime team, we actually see a lot of people who are in the core Siberian region that are still in favour of the dictatorship style of government actually switch sides and join up with the Grey team. And this leads to the Grey team consolidating a very large amount of control over the northern regions. Unfortunately for them, they do now have to start fighting up against the communists, as the communists do plan to take over all of Siberia. They say that we are the continuation of Siberia, so we have a claim over all of this land. Moving back over to the pro-democratic forces, we do see them continue to get pushed back on. That is, until we actually see the USB start to fund these guys. Now, Tokyo isn't too big of a fan of this, as, first of all, to fund these guys, they have to move through the Coral Island Straits, which are technically international waters. You are allowed to move through them, but they are kind of still close vicinity to Tokyo, so I'm not too sure how Tokyo would feel about that. And in response to this, we see Tokyo start to fund the Japanese ethnicity group, which is quite interesting because these guys don't actually really like Tokyo. They more so align with Hokkaido, which, well, doesn't exist anymore. But anything to combat the USB, right? Well, this USB funding is actually really helping out the democracies, as they are able to make a pretty notable pushback, just like so, and they also make some land gains in the north, even though there's probably nothing happening up here. Hey, fun fact, this island was actually the last place that woolly mammoths ever existed, so yeah, fun facts with Olsen. But either way, these guys are going to be continuing to make an advance into the Japanese group. And finally, moving back over to Siberia, we see the main government basically just switch sides as they join up with this new dictatorship, which basically is the successor to Siberia. And with this happening, we see the dark green team make a peace deal with the grey team, basically saying, you can have some land, exactly these two provinces here, more specifically, these two provinces right here. But after that, you have to leave us alone. The green team is perfectly fine with that, so the green team basically just exits the war, and now it's only the main Siberian groups left. We see the dictatorship quickly make an advance into the democratic region. However, still, for them, they are having to fight a two-front war, as we see the communists continue to advance in. However, at this point, we're actually going to be seeing a stroke of luck happen for the dictatorship movement, as Volga is going to go over to the communists and say, hey, you've got your independence, and now you're invading other countries that have their own states. That is not the greatest thing we want to see happening, so we're going to give you two options. One, you just leave the war right now, we'll help you maintain a peace deal with the dictatorships, we'll force a peace treaty on the dictatorship that lets you have the land you have now and get your independence. Or option two, you continue fighting in this war and you're going to get attacked by us. Now, luckily for the communists, they have some smart leaders, so they're going to go ahead and agree with Volga, and at this point Volga is going to go over to the Grey Team and say, sign the treaty. And since the Grey Team doesn't really want to pick a fight with Volga, one of the strongest Russian countries, these guys are going to reluctantly sign a peace treaty with the communists, and just like that, the communists have gotten their independence. However, there is still fighting happening over here, so let's take a look at this. Due to the Tokyo funding now coming in, and with even more USB funding also coming in, this front line with the Japanese People's State and the democratic region has basically just stalemated, so at this point the only fighting in the war is happening between the democratic and the dictatorship movements. So what we see happening is a little bit of pushback by the democracy. However, overall, the dictatorships are kind of winning. But then the USB sends over a bargain bucket of missiles to the democratic group, and they just start blasting the Grey Team's major cities, and this allows them to make a very notable push into the Grey Team, until the Grey Team is like, okay, fine, let's just sign a peace treaty. We just want our independence and we've got that, so you can have your land, we have our land. How does that sound? The USB, who doesn't want to risk continuing the fight and losing this point of influence they have just gained, is going to go ahead and accept this. So let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we see in the peace treaty. So first things first, we see the green team get this chunk of land right down here. This is their spoils that were agreed upon by the new dictatorship government. Next up, and this is the largest amount of land lost in a single treaty, we see the communist country get their independence right here. So just like that, we've got a pretty big communist country up here. Next up, we see the democratic country get their independence. As you probably just saw a few seconds ago, these guys did have a bit of a different shaped country, but it looked so bad I had to change it. This does unfortunately mean they don't get this major city, but I think it's a worthy sacrifice. And finally, we see the Japanese ethno-state country get their independence just like so. In regards to capitals, this is going to be quite easy to do as there is only one city in a few of these countries. First of all, the Siberian country is going to move their capital down here, because this is not the original Siberian country that was in here before the war. This is the new dictatorship government that started down here as the grey thing, so that is why we see that happening. The communist country is going to have their capital right here, as this is where they basically started out as. And with the democratic and the Japanese group, it's pretty easy for them, obviously they only have one major city each, so that is where we're going to be seeing their capitals. And as the final event in this episode, we see the democratic faction go ahead and join up in the Square Alliance, as they had basically been saved by the USB, and the USB was like, hey, we could get a vantage point against Tokyo with this, so why don't you go ahead and join us, and they accepted. And that is what we see there. But that is going to be it for this episode. I really hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you in the next one.